Hi, my name is Dr. Robert C. Thompson, and you're watching the 5 fallen angels you should probably know about. Our terms today revolve around the notion of a fall, which is Judeo-Christian and refers to a departure from God which results in lasting metaphysical shortcomings, theorized by Augustine of Hippo as original sin. Angels are superhuman beings created before humanity to serve God in heaven and as messengers and agents of God on earth. Asmodeus. Asmodeus is among the most famous and frequently referenced of the fallen angels and is most closely associated with sex and lust. In the book of Tobit, which dates to about 200 years before the Common Era and appears in some versions of the Bible, Tobit tells the story of Tobias, his son, who travels from his home in Nineveh to Ecbatana to claim money for his father. On the way, while dangling his legs in the Tigris, a fish tried to eat Tobias's foot, and so he caught it and killed it. His guardian angel Raphael, who had disguised himself as Tobias's traveling companion, told Tobias to reserve the fish's heart, liver, and gall for later. In addition to retrieving money for his father, Tobias also had a plan to marry the beautiful Sarah, despite the fact that Sarah was seemingly cursed. You see, Asmodeus, the demon, was in love with Sarah, and 7 men had married her and been put to death the night of their wedding. That is to say, they were undone by Asmodeus before they could consummate their union with Sarah. After his wedding to Sarah, Tobias took Raphael's advice and burned the fish heart and liver. When Asmodeus came to kill him, the smoke drove the devil into Egypt. Tobias returned to Nineveh, where he used the fish's gall to cure his father, who had been blinded when a bird pooped in his eyes. Asmodeus is also regarded as a ruler of the Masakan. The Masakan are a lower class of demons, half human and half supernatural, split into 2 groups. The first are the children of Adam and his first wife, Lilith. Having abandoned Adam for refusing to allow her to get on top during sex, Lilith became a kind of demon and ruled over her demonic children with Adam as queen. But Adam's second wife, Eve, also had some side action. While Adam was away with Lilith, Eve was creating the Shedim, the offspring of Eve, and male demonic spirits who are ruled over by none other than Asmodeus. The ancient king Solomon summons Asmodeus and has him flogged until he tells who he is. Finding out a demon's name, according to demonological lore, is central to controlling a demon, although, as Asmodeus warns, a person can't control a demon for long, and the demon often overwhelms its supposed master. Solomon possesses a powerful ring that allows him to control demons and put them to work helping him build his temple. Keeping with the tradition established in Tobit, Asmodeus says, "I am called Asmodeus among mortals, and my business is to plot against the newly wedded, so that they may not know one another. And I sever them utterly by many calamities, and I waste away the beauty of virgin women, and estrange their hearts." The Orthodox Islamic scholar Ibn Taymiyyah retold the Solomon story, reframing Solomon's demons as jinn. Jinn can be good or evil, depending on whether they have accepted the teachings of Muhammad. Allah had given Solomon the power to control the winds, and also the evil jinn. Ibn Taymiyyah says that Solomon had Asmodeus, called Ashmedai, confined to a jar. So much for Asmodeus. But it's best not to assume that we're out of the weeds when it comes to his vicious interventions in the lives and loves of humans, as we'll discover next in the Book of Enoch. Semjaza. There's a curious statement in Genesis chapter 6. The book says that the Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown. This is the only reference in the Pentateuch, or anywhere else in the Torah or New Testament, to the Nephilim, and it became the source for the 3rd century BCE Book of Enoch. According to tradition, Enoch is the great-grandfather of Noah. Enoch's writer describes the sons of God who came into the daughters of men as the Watchers, and names their leader Semjaza. The concept of a single devil was centuries from being developed, as well as the notion of a fallen Lucifer, whose story does not have much to do with the Nephilim, and so Semjaza took a lead role in the tale of the Watchers. The rebellious angels said to Semjaza, "Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men and beget us children." But Semjaza was reluctant, worrying that the angels would abandon him and that he alone, as their leader, would have to pay the penalty for this sin. And so the angels pledged themselves to a mutual oath to commit these fornications. The daughters of men gave birth to giants who ran amok. In the meantime, the angels caused their own chaos. This chaos involved a narrative confusion as well. Semjaza, the angels' initial leader, came to take a secondary backseat role to Azazel, a demon most closely associated with the ancient scapegoat. Semjaza led the initial sex romp, but Azazel took over the educational portion of the cosmic fall. Azazel was first in line to teach humans horrible things, which is what they got up to while the giants were making a mess of creation. Azazel taught humanity how to make swords and weapons and other implements for making war, and also how to make jewelry, which is sort of bad, I guess. Then he taught them how to use eyeshadow, which led to a bunch more fornication. And the other angels taught them about astronomy and meteorology, which apparently led men to die horrifically, presumably by correctly predicting a snowstorm during a new moon and then skiing into a flagpole. Says Enoch, Semjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings, Armoros the resolving of enchantments, Barakajil astrology, Kokabel the constellations, Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds, and Sarael the course of the moons. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. God responded by sending his angels to clean up the mess with the deluge, also known as Noah's flood, among other things. The giants who aspired to become gods devoured each other, and their spirits became evil ghosts wandering the earth. The women who had sex with the Watchers became sirens, and Semjaza and his followers were banished to a great abyss full of descending columns of fire, from which they could send their spirits forth to corrupt men into worshipping demons as gods, presumably by masquerading as false idols. But God reserved special punishment for Azazel, the demonic teacher. God decreed that his angels bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the darkness and make an opening in the desert which is in Dudael and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks and cover him with darkness and let him abide there forever and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. Beelzebub. Beelzebub is sometimes conflated with Satan. In the Testament of Solomon, after Solomon bound the demon Ornias, who had been plaguing a young worker on his temple construction project, Ornias brought Solomon to see Beelzebub. The book described Beelzebub as the master of the demons. Beelzebub brought back with him the female spirit Oniskelus, who Solomon put to work in the most sexist way possible, weaving for the temple. Oniskelus was a beautiful satyr-like demon with the legs of a mule who traveled by the light of the full moon. Each angel in Solomon's telling is bound by a different archangel, but Beelzebub must be bound by God himself, further pointing the link between Beelzebub and Satan. By the medieval period, Beelzebub was more often regarded as an agent of Satan or Lucifer, rather than being Satan himself. A Lollard text associated major demons with the 7 deadly sins. Lucifer was associated with pride. Beelzebub was joined to gluttony. In the late Renaissance text Ars Goetia, a kind of encyclopedia of demons, Beelzebub was joined up with Baal to form the demon Baal. Baal is one of the several kings subordinated to Lucifer, says the book. He maketh thee to go invisible. He ruleth over 66 legions of infernal spirits. He appeareth in diverse shapes, sometimes like a cat, sometimes like a toad, and sometimes like a man, and sometimes all these forms at once. He speaketh hoarsely. This is his character, which is used to be worn as a lawman before him who calleth him forth, or else he will not do thee homage. The Renaissance Dutch playwright Joost van den Vondel described Beelzebub as one of the chief lieutenants of Lucifer. In the great battle with the loyal angels of heaven, the rebellious angels were led by Lucifer. Belial and Beelzebub attacked as 2 points of a crescent, with Lucifer holding the center and Apollyon hoisting his banner. But more on that battle later. The Serpent. When God placed humanity's parents Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, God said they could go pretty much wherever they wanted and do whatever they wanted. They ate from the tree of life and enjoyed immortality. They got to name all the animals and make out, and everything was sunshine and rainbows. The only thing they weren't allowed to do was eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but an evil agent arrived in the garden, namely, the serpent. The serpent came to the Garden of Eden to tempt Eve into eating from the forbidden tree. An important theological and metaphysical question lingers about the serpent. Who was he, or she? Genesis doesn't tell us much about the serpent, but seems to imply that the serpent is just another animal in the garden, albeit one who talks and questions the will of its almighty creator. Quoting here, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say, you must not eat from any tree in the garden?' The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from that tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die.' 'You will not certainly die,' the serpent said to the woman, 'for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.'" In the apocryphal Book of Adam and Eve, dating to the 6th century, the serpent attempted to kill Adam and Eve. Says the book, "They found the serpent that became Satan coming at the gate, and sorrowfully licking the dust, and wriggling on its breast on the ground by reason of the curse that fell upon it from God. And whereas aforetime the serpent was the most exalted of all beasts, now it was changed and become slippery, and the meanest of them all, and it crept on its breast and went on its belly. The serpent attacked Eve, and Adam grabbed it by the tail. Said the serpent, 'O Adam, because of thee and Eve I am slippery and go upon my belly.' Then by reason of its great strength it threw down Adam and Eve and pressed upon them as if it would kill them. But God intervened, had the talking serpent struck dumb so it wouldn't run its mouth anymore, and then threw it all the way to India." While the book of Revelation described Satan as an ancient serpent, it did not connect Satan to the specific serpent in the garden. Still, by the 6th century, when the book of Adam and Eve was written, and even in the centuries before then, the association was being developed. Milton was more explicit in identifying the serpent as Lucifer, but Milton drew his inspiration in part from the Dutch playwright Joost van den Vondel. In his play Lucifer, Vondel described the serpent as an agent of Lucifer, specifically his lieutenant Belial. Other interpreters took the opposite approach and read the serpent as a mortal being, often in racial terms. The Urantia book, for example, says that the serpent was actually a human lieutenant, Sarapatasia, in Adam and Eve's service, who persuaded Eve to reproduce with Kano, a superior warrior of the lower races, to elevate the lower races of the planet through miscegenation. Racial interpretations of the Adam and Eve story became significant to racist identity Christians whose theology informed white supremacist and separatist militias in the 1990s and up to the present day. In opposition to these various Christian teachings, occultist and theosophist Helena Blavatsky saw the serpent as a positive figure, opening the door to higher spiritual knowledge that had been closed by a jealous and controlling Old Testament God. The opening of Adam and Eve's eyes was, metaphorically, a significant step toward humanity's gradual spiritual ascension. Lucifer. The word Lucifer comes from the Jewish prophet Isaiah, who says, "You will take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, 'How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations, for you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will also sit on the mount of the congregation, on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High, yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit.'" The literal translation of Lucifer is Shining One, or Son of the Morning, a reference to the morning star and brightest planet in the solar system, namely Venus. A close reading of the text suggests that Isaiah had no intention of describing a celestial event or an entity named Lucifer, but rather he wanted to compare an arrogant and prideful Babylonian king to a planet. "O wicked king, you're bright and shining, but you're acting like a big jerk, and God is going to toss you down into a pit." Another school of thought says Lucifer is a fallen angel, and Isaiah says so, and you translation people should just go on and get over yourselves. The three writers most responsible for our understanding of the fall of Lucifer are Dante, Milton, and Just van den Vondel. Vondel is the most obscure of these three, but his ideas were central to the development of Luciferian mythology. In his play, Lucifer, Vondel hits the hallmarks of the fallen angel trope. The play starts after God has created Adam and Eve and placed them in the Garden of Eden. The angel Apollyon, who serves with Beelzebub and is going to end up on Lucifer's team, visits the garden to spy on the humans and is struck by how sexy Eve is and how perfect Adam is and how much fun they seem to be having making out and feeding on the feasts of fiery love. Beelzebub says to Apollyon, "It seems that passion for this feminine creature hath thy heart inflamed." Apollyon worries that man's capacity for sex will be the cause of humanity overtaking the angels. He says, "No angel hath the power to multiply, his being 1,000,000 times in swarms innumerable. Now do thou calculate what shalt from this in time the outcome be." Just as Apollyon is in the midst of salivating and complaining about humanity's sexiness, Lucifer drops by with his own complaints. Lucifer's main gripe is that God has placed humanity above the rest of the angels. "For," says Lucifer, "God was man-created, we for him. Let then the angels bend their necks beneath his feet." But Lucifer is also aware of the procreation issue. Echoing Apollyon, he plaintively asks Gabriel, "Shall Gabriel, the sacred crown of the holy angels, place on Adam's head, through Adam's son and heir crush God's firstborn?" By God's firstborn, Lucifer means the race of angels who are unable, as we've said, to reproduce. Vondel is a bit ambiguous about whether Lucifer actually intends to replace God as a result of his war against the omniscient creator. He describes the Luciferian angels taking up arms and crowning Lucifer as their god, but Lucifer says he is battling under God for the defense of the angels against Adam and Eve's usurpation of their place in the cosmic hierarchy. Perhaps Lucifer is simply deluded. Commenting on the fall of Lucifer, Augustine tried to make sense of why an angel would choose to fall to hell rather than hang out with the all-perfect, all-loving, all-knowing God. Augustine wondered if maybe God had created angels with a less than perfect knowledge of him, that is to say, God. The good and loyal angels were content to wait for God to reveal what had been hidden, or just live with the imperfect knowledge. But Lucifer's disloyal angels, destined to fall, refused to wait and fell as a result of their impatience to know more. In the great battle, as Belial and Beelzebub formed their crescent-shaped attack, God's army concentrated on the center of the crescent where Lucifer was fighting and brought down Lucifer first. As he fell, Lucifer was transformed into a horrible chimera with the snout and claws and dragon's wings. For their part, the other rebellious angels were routed and cast down, and as Lucifer fell, he sent Belial to become the serpent and curse Adam and Eve with their own fall. You've been watching the 5 fallen angels you should probably know about. My name is Dr. Rob C. Thompson. I have written and performed this episode, which has been edited by Daniel Rosendale.